Look, this world is so wicked, they real is fictitious and kill on suspicion. They clowning, they dragging these kids to the gutter to murder specifics. I just can't get with it. Women is suffering, lies is buffering. Yeah, chasing something that's nothing. This who is the substance where I put trust in being. Yeah, the government head. This world is so wicked, they real is fictitious and kill on suspicion. They clowning, they dragging these kids to the gutter to murder specifics. I just can't get with it. Women is suffering, lies is buffering. Chasing something that's nothing. This who is the substance where I put trust in being. God, the government. This world is so wicked, it's sickening, it's backwards. These people is actors, following scripts. I try to swallow my pride, but can't coexist. Competing with masses and these little bastards were bastards for moving right. They tell us we can do wrong if we do it right. It's like messing around with opinions. Messing around with these feelings, but getting purity, venomous, mirroring images, gauging appearances, missing the spirit, man, chasing bucks. Bank for 50 cents, give it all up in the end to be energy. What is we doing here? Envy is flowing here. What you pursuing here? Knowing that ruins nerves.
St. Louis, Missouri, what many of us have known as home. Never would I have thought that it holds some of the most deepest secrets of all civilization. It's also been known for its extremely high crime rate, year after year after year. Let's not forget about the sports team as well. Much revenue comes from these activities that surround the downtown St. Louis area. Much pent-up energy, built-up energy, over millennia, used for finance. I know most of you don't understand what I'm talking about just yet. But in reality, these underserved areas, they are the most powerful places on the planet for a reason. Once upon a time, St. Louis was the fourth largest city in America. It also served as a great hub for the transportation of goods, hence the 1904 World's Fair. But let's go back to the history. Ancient St. Louis. The earthen-born, later known as Mound City.
Here is a map. Here is the area that we are looking at, where that little monument lies. Mapping was done. A huge mound that looked a lot like the ones at Cahokia and a Poverty Point. That's the way that shape looks like. But there was a great mound within the city limits of St. Louis a long time ago. It was totally razed, totally taken out. Here is a pic at what that shore at St. Louis looked like in an artist rendition with the great mound right here. Here are workers when they were dismantling the mound, putting in newer construction, city, homes, some industry in this area. And here you get a good idea of the former shape of this. It was a sloping mound, very good sized, and it would have taken probably a lot of work to totally get rid of this. And there were smaller mounds that were also taken out in this area, and it's why St. Louis is called Mound City. Now, this was written in the St. Louis newspaper in 1869. It says, "Men are digging on every side, and what should have been purchased by the city and preserved inviolate will soon be known only in local tradition." So wrote the Daily Missouri Democrat, a local newspaper, on November 8, 1868, on the fate of Big Mound, the largest of a cluster of earthen formations left by long-departed Native American culture. The mounds were north of the city's main business district, on a rise overlooking the Mississippi River. It says, Big Mound at today's North Broadway and Mound Street was 319 feet long, 158 feet wide, and 34 feet high. Its flat top provided a panorama of river and city. It was a landmark for steamboat pilots and inspired one of St. Louis' first nicknames, Mound City, a term that once grazed dozens of names of businesses and associations. What the formation didn't get was respect. Some people built homes on them. In 1833, the city hollowed out Little Mound at 3rd and O'Fallon Streets for a water reservoir. A steam engine pumped water from the river. In 1844, The Field and Vandeventer Lumber Company built a 2-story reception building atop Big Mound with an extensive, beautiful view. Called Mound Pavilion, it flopped as an attraction and burned in 1848. But I've said it once, I'll say it again, the ancient United States was a very fascinating place. We had big pyramids built by spiritual people. We had massive cities. When the government of the United States tell you that there was little bands of roaming savages cruising across the United States, no, these were sophisticated cities. They were no different than places in Mexico and Central America. Pyramids, astronomy, great knowledge built into these places. And people back then, 150, 175 years ago, said these weren't. And they totally removed them. A lot of them. Most of them.
As far as they were concerned, housing, enclosures, and masonry were unknown to indigenous Americans. But nothing could be further from the truth. Today, the city of St. Louis occupies an area with the largest mound in the world, including the pyramids and Mexico. It can reasonably be asserted that these mounds are covering grandiose structures rivaling any one of the 7 wonders. And one shouldn't look past the St. Louis Arch as a modern version of a great wonder. A literal feat of engineering, architecture, and masonry. Even though its construction was completed in the 1960s, there is no doubt this monument stands as a powerful symbol of ancient significance. This arch marks the location of one of the most important ancient capitals in world history. I often wonder if there used to be an even larger arch extending from one side of the river to the other. Just something I thought about. Neither here nor there, I guess. On the east of modern-day St. Louis sat one of the most massive earthworks on record, Cahokia, and on the west bank, St. Louis was built over a gargantuan structure simply called Big Mound. So big that it was used as a river navigation landmark. This area of St. Louis was a central hub of influence for a significant portion of the Great River and its tributaries. Those tributaries including the Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, and Tennessee rivers most especially. And we are back with another hit from Charlatan Magazine. This article, White Settlers Buried the Truth About the Midwest Mysterious Mound Cities. Pioneers and early archaeologists credited distant civilizations, not Native Americans, with building these sophisticated complexes. So, obviously there's going to be a lot of deception in this article, but get ready to wade in the water, children, because there's going to be a lot of bullshit in that water. Around 11 or 1200 AD, the largest city north of Mexico was Cahokia, sitting in what is now southern Illinois, across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, aka Little Egypt. Built around 1050 AD, 1050 AD, I'm pretty sure that it's already been established that the civilization existed before 1050 AD. So once again, they're going to discount the antiquity of the society. So essentially, what happened is, in less than 300 years, not only did they create the civilization, but it also fell during the same period. And occupied through 1400 AD, 350 years. All right. Cahokia had a peak population of between 25,000 and 50,000 people. Come on, son. Once again, we see another deflation of obvious statistics that should be higher. Because anyone who's studied the mounds and seen the mounds know that the proportions of the mounds indicate a much larger population, just in the idea of the amount of people it would have taken to construct the mounds. Continuing. Cahokia had a peak population of 25 to 50,000 people, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, did you know that Italy has the world's most UNESCO heritage sites? This would be an implication that Italy has more history than any other place on earth. You know, that little boot. All right. Cahokia was composed of 3 boroughs: Cahokia, East St. Louis, and St. Louis. Okay, so within these 3 boroughs, they're proposing that, there was probably about not even 20,000 people in each borough, considering that they put the population at a maximum of 50,000 people. Right.
I think all of us pretty much understand a civilization needs to strive around a body of water. After all, water produces life. The Mississippi River and the Missouri River provide 2 of the greatest sources of water in North America. St. Louis connects right at the edge. Many people believe the Mississippi is the great river Euphrates. Some believe it's the Nile. We know it's something. Geographically, it makes sense. And if we're going by the names, this area and surrounding areas was known as Little Egypt. In the year 2023, I'm pretty sure we're all aware that history has been skewed. And the middle of America, St. Louis, Illinois region, comes to the heart of many different mysteries. There are great channels out there showing how America is Egypt, like UBTV. I personally believe America is Egypt and ancient Rome, and I have many reasons to believe that. The 1904 World's Fair is sufficient evidence for that assumption,
And this is your
but we'll talk about that
History
at a later date.
Before we were the gateway to the West, St. Louis was most often called Mound City. We named our shoe stores and our car dealerships and even our colleges Mound City. That was because of the dozens of mounds built on this side of the river by the Mississippian. The biggest was called Big Mound by subsequent St. Louisans and measured 319 feet long and 34 feet high. It was so large that riverboat captains used it to mark where they were on their journeys. But as St. Louis grew during the early and middle 1800s, these mounds were seen as obstacles to that growth, and so the mounds were destroyed, with the destruction of Big Mound completed in 1869. The erasure of this city's Native American history and of its defining symbols speaks to the fragility of the past and to the changing nature of what we value.
Fragility, indeed.
As you look across this valley, historic reports from early settlers of St. Louis reported that literally the bluffs along the rivers, both sides, were dotted with mounds. Unfortunately, today there's only one mound remaining in the city of St. Louis, and that's Sugarloaf Mound. St. Louis used to be called Mound City. That was our nickname. And early visitors to St. Louis, Europeans, marveled at the mounds in present-day downtown St. Louis, and they were very concerned as one by one these mounds started being destroyed to make way for a growing city, and they urged the city administrators at the time to preserve these mounds, and they even said what a wonderful city this would be to come visit. People would come from all over the world to see this great city and to visit the great Indian mounds that are here. About 1,000 years ago, this valley, the Mississippi Valley, right in front of present-day St. Louis, was the busiest place in what is present-day the United States of America. People had reached a level where they were living in the same area year-round, year after year, and they had become an intensely agricultural culture, centered primarily around growing corn.
Know that while they were here, they developed a very highly complex social, political, religious system.
Studying from artifacts, from their artwork, and also listening to Native American stories that are told today and that were handed down from generation to generation, that they may have had a three-part view of their universe. The lower world or world beneath was below water or caves, and many mounds were actually built atop cave systems. The middle world was occupied by humans, and the upper world was a spirit world where their deity lived and dominated, the sun. And they may have built the mounds to reach up from the middle world, placing their leaders or perhaps their temple high up closer to the upper world.
Now let's take a minor detour. He just mentioned that these ancient civilizations believed in a water or underworld, a middle world, and an upper world. I don't know if you have noticed this, but the movie Black Panther 2 and the movie Avatar 2 are the exact same movie. Both depict the unification of water and land people against their colonizers or their oppressors. One must be realistic and ask themselves, why do these two movies, these two blockbuster movies, have similar plots at this specific time? I won't go too far into that right now. Maybe at a later date. Let's just stick to Mound City because we have enough just in that topic alone. Hey, look at the background. It even looks like the arch, doesn't it? Maybe I'm just reaching.
History, historian Roger Kennedy was shocked to learn for the first time that massive ancient city remains existed in North America.
Very, very few of us were conscious of the immensity of a place like Monk's Mound at Cahokia, opposite St. Louis, which is bigger in its footprint than the Great Pyramid at Giza. We didn't know that.
Most Americans have no idea that ancient cities with advanced architectures once dotted the ancient North American landscape. Director Kennedy has since coined a name for such places.
What I call hidden cities. I use the term because these were very big places. There were more people, we now know, in Cahokia, across from St. Louis, than there were in London or Rome.
So just real quick, returning to this book, we've read this before. We're going to continue reading from it in future videos. Just want to remind everybody what they were saying about St. Louis in this and its people, its possible builders. It says here, hidden cities, the discovery and loss of ancient North American civilization, Roger G. Kennedy. All right, that's the director of the Smithsonian Institute. The world of the first Americans was richer, greater, more wondrous by far than most of us have ever imagined or than most histories have ever even implied. Okay? We're right in the beginning of this book, page 5, and it's in regards to the colonists, it says they had the benefit of a shock of discovery. In few instances in human history has architecture been so important in altering the impression of the nature of one people in the eyes of others. The founders had not anticipated that they would find in the West large, sophisticated, and ancient work performed by the kind of people still resident there. Still resident there. Listen, still resident there. That architectural evidence was too obtrusive to be ignored. The new cities of the Central Valley, Cincinnati, St. Louis, okay, St. Louis, Marietta, Portsmouth, Lexington, Pittsburgh, Natchez, and Nashville had to be built by clearing away evidence of older ones, okay? In order for them to build their cities and start their civilizations, they had to get rid of yours. Literally telling you, in the countryside, there were hundreds of thousands of earthen reminders of prior habitation. There still are tens of thousands. The shock of these discoveries forced upon the founders the possibility that Indians were not all savages. The founders knew nothing of ancient Africa. They don't know anything about Africa. So how do you know that the people in America came from there if you didn't know anything about Africa, outside of a little learning about Egypt? What Egypt? You're still here. Had they known something of it at the time they were becoming acquainted with ancient America, listen, if they actually really knew ancient Egypt, if they actually really knew Africa, during the time they were coming here to colonize, listen to what he's going to say, they might have enlarged the sense of the Negro possibility considerably farther. What do they mean by that? What do you mean? And by extension, their apprehension of what other darker, right? Not lighter, darker skinned people, such as ancient Americans, all right? Darker skinned people, such as ancient Americans, might have done, but they were neither so fortunate nor so bold. We are so fortunate, and we may be so bold. Knowledge of the past may help alter the present. Are you guys listening? I've read this before. He's literally telling you, he spilled the beans, the director of the Smithsonian Institute, this guy who wrote this book, he's telling you literally, he's not saying directly, but he's saying, hey, there's other so-called Negroes here in ancient America. And if you would have actually known anything about Africa, you would have seen that we have our own darker skinned people, other darker skinned people, such as ancient Americans. He's telling you ancient Americans were dark skinned people, all right? Stop with your Pan-African ideologies. He's telling you not Africans, other, not Africans. They don't descend from other darker skinned people, okay? Again, and before we read already, he said that the people who build these monuments, are still resident there. They're still resident there. You're still there. Wake up.
Yes, those natives are still resident there. We can't continue to listen to the lies about slavery. Everybody came over on boats, blah, blah, blah. No, wars were fought. Land was conquered. Structures were built, and structures were built on top of structures. Excavated land and debris was poured on top of ancient structures, creating mounds. Some of this debris was used to create the foundation of the city as well. Laws were set in place, people migrated and were displaced, but now we have come to a precipice. As more and more is revealed, the earth will begin to shake. We will dig later into topics like the 1904 World's Fair. Many of those structures still have to be explained. And also the St. Louis footprints, ancient footprint burned into limestone slabs. Some believe to be the angel Gabriel, others to believe to be the feet of Jesus. Whatever outcome you come to, I think we can agree that the truth must be told. Shalom.